Hello everyone, I'm Sarah and it's time for Friday Fun Day with Sarah. So today what we're going to do is we're going to stitch up some four-leaf clovers and some shamrocks, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what is the purpose of blocking. And do I have to have a blocking board? Well, why am I going to block it if it's just going to come out anyway when I wash it? We're going to talk about those things as well as make some cute little four-leaf clovers and shamrocks, okay? Now, I have this pattern for this simple little applique, and there is two of them, the four-leaf clover and the shamrock. So there's the difference. What's the difference between a shamrock and a clover? Well, all shamrocks are clovers, but not all four-leaf clovers are shamrocks. A shamrock is a clover that only has 3 petals or leaflets. A four-leaf clover has 4 petals or leaflets. That's the difference. It's math, 3 and 4. Want to make sure you learned a little something today. Now you can find the crochet pattern for the four-leaf clover and the shamrock on my blog. Also instructions on blocking. And you can find that link down in the notes underneath this video. Now let's find out what we need to get started. To make some of these little appliques, you can use any green medium weight number 4 yarn that you have on hand. This one is a cotton. This one is some leftover mandala that was in the ombre that I had some green left. And then this we're going to do today, this is just your basic acrylic yarn. I believe it's the I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby. You can use cotton, acrylic, whatever medium weight number 4 yarn that you have in your yarn stash. And of course I'm making clovers and shamrocks, so I'm going to do them in green. But you don't have to. You can do whatever colors that you want to. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle for weaving in ends and your scissors. Now, as far as blocking them, this is a blocking board that I purchased at Michael's, I believe, and I think there were $4.99 a piece, and I have 4 of these. I actually have 3 like this, and then I have this other one that's the Crochet Dude one that I really like. I just like the colors, and I like that the lines are in blue because they're a lot more distinct. And these are 1 by 1 inch blocks. Now, if you don't have a blocking board, there's a couple other things that you can use to block. You can get a nice piece of sponge, maybe in some of the packaging that you get from ordering from Amazon. I don't know about you, but I order from Amazon sometimes. You can use any type of sponge, anything that you can stick a pin in. Now, if you don't have any foam or sponge, you can also use a piece of cardboard that's thick enough for the pin to go in. And what I suggest you do is that you put a towel over it, and then you can pin it in place. The only thing about not using a blocking board that's marked is you don't have your inch markings. And we're going to talk more about the blocking when we finish making our clover and shamrock. And of course you're going to need some straight pins, and I really want to remind you, a lot of the older pins that we used to use many years ago when I was first learning to sew were not stainless steel, and they would rust. I really recommend you toss those out because if you get them wet, they're going to rust. And so it's a good idea just to pick up some regular straight pins like this. They also have T-pins that work nice. I like the ones that are just a little bit longer. I think they're called dressmaker pins. Not exactly sure because I haven't bought them in a while. But I like those. They're nice and long. And I'll pick one up about once a month because I lose these often. But yeah, you're going to need a bunch of pins to pin it in place. And then lastly, you're going to need a bottle that says water only. And this is the one I use for ironing because I don't iron with any starch. And we'll talk more about adding stiffeners to your water later. But a couple of stiffeners that you can use is Elmer's glue, as well as starch. But we'll talk more about needing that or not when we finish at the end of the video, when we finish making our shamrocks. Okay, so we're going to make our shamrocks and our clover first, and then we'll talk about how to block. We're going to make a shamrock first, which is our 3-petaled clover. So we're going to begin with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. We're going to stitch 5 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. I like to consider that third chain as a place to hold it. All right, so we're going to go in the second chain and stitch 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move it out of the way now. 4 and 5. We're going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. Get some more yarn out here. Now we're going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to go to the next single crochet and slip stitch. And chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go to the next single crochet and slip stitch. And chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we'll go to that next single crochet and slip stitch. And since we're only doing 3 petals, we're making a shamrock, we're going to slip stitch in those last 2 stitches. And this brings us back over where we started with our 3 chain 6 loops. All right, so now in each of those chain 6 loops, we're going to single crochet 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we'll move to our next chain 6 loop and single crochet 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll do that in our last chain 6 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to slip stitch in that next stitch. There we go. So we have our 3 petals or leaflets. We're going to slip stitch in that next stitch and chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to slip stitch in the second chain, the third chain, the fourth chain, and the 5th chain. And then we'll slip stitch right back in that same stitch. We'll cut our yarn and tie off. Whoops, there we go. All right, so we've made our shamrock. We're going to take our needle and weave those ends in. And the first thing we want to do, my yarn on there, is close up this hole in the center. So we'll just go around with our needle, make it look nice and neat. There we go. And then we'll weave in this other end. Now, if you're going to be sewing this onto something, when you're weaving in this tail of yarn, there we go, you can bring it up to the center like this. And if you're going to sew it onto something, you can use that to sew it onto whatever you're going to sew it onto. Maybe a headband or a hat or a bookmark or something. But if not, go ahead and weave that in. There we go. Frayed on the end there a little bit, but there is our shamrock. And remember, shamrock has 3 petals or leaflets. All right, now let's make our 4-leaf clover. We're going to start the same, slip knot, chain 3, 5 single crochets in the second chain. There's 3, 4, the tail yarn out of the way, and 5. We'll join to that first single crochet, chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, slip stitch in the next single crochet, chain 6, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, slip stitch in the next single crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, again slip stitch in the next single crochet, and now we're going to chain 6 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, slip stitch in the next single crochet. So now we just have 1 single crochet to slip stitch in instead of 2, because we made 4 petals or leaflets instead of 3. So we'll stitch 6 single crochets in each of these chain 6 spaces. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll repeat that on these 3 petals. I stitch 6 single crochets in each of my chain 6 spaces. So there's my 4 petals, and we only have 1 stitch down here instead of 2. So we'll slip stitch in that stitch, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the second chain from the hook and in each of those chains. And then we'll just slip stitch right to that same stitch. We'll cut our yarn and tie off, and then again use our needle to weave in these ends. I tidied up my 4-leaf clover and my shamrock, and I went ahead and pinned them to my board. And so what I do is, like with this one, I want to make sure the tail's going to be a curl because I'm going to attach it to something. That one's a little bit, there we go, that's better. And so what I do is I pin it to the board the shape I want it to be. And then I just take my water and I spritz it. And I'm not going to spritz it up here because I don't want to get everything wet on my workspace. But I don't soak it down, I just dampen it. Okay, and I only use water. Now there are cases where you might be wanting to use something to stiffen it up. Starch works great. And another thing that I like to do is 50-50 with the white glue. The name brand is Elmer's glue, but you can use any of the white school glues and do a 50-50, 50% water and 50% glue. It works really great for making like snowflakes that you want to be stiff to hang on your Christmas tree, or even ornaments like that that you want maybe to use as a bunting. It works really nice for that. Another thing that I use from time to time is the spray glitter. A couple years ago, I made some snow globes that were ornaments. I think they were made by Repeat Crafter Me, and she does some really pretty things. But I wanted to stiffen them up a little bit. So I pinned them to the board. I spritzed them with a little bit of water and let them dry. Then the next day, I sprayed them with spray glitter. And you can find the spray glitter in white, in silver, or in iridescent. And I purchased it at Walmart back in the craft department. You can also find it at Hobby Lobby, at Michael's, and at Joann's as well. And so those are some really good options that you can use depending on how stiff you want it. Another thing that I like to block are my granny squares. And I realize that once you sew them together, it's not really going to matter. But when you finish a granny square, and this is one we're going to be doing in a project for our Friday Fun Day in a couple of weeks, we're going to make a hanging wall decoration using this Starburst granny square. And you can see it's not a perfect square. So what I'll do is I'll put them on here, and this one just happens to be smaller, so I can get 4 on here so that it's shaped nicely. Because what it does is it makes it a lot easier to hook them together if you can line up the edges better. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pin them onto my blocking boards so that it's nice and crisp for the corners. And if they're not laying flat, you can always put a pin here as well. And this is just a temporary fix, but I can spritz this with my water, and then I'll set this on top of my dryer. And one of the neat things about blocking boards, let me grab this other one, is if you have bigger items, they hook together. And if I had bigger squares, I may need more space. And so you can hook them together. Okay? And that's a really neat thing about these. I love these. Oh, I forgot to tell you, you can get these, I think, in a 5-pack at Joann's. I think they were $11.99 or $12.99 for 5 of them. And so it's good to have a good amount of these. I actually have 4 like this light green and then this one dark green. I was looking around trying to see which ones I had. And I really like using them. They work great. But again, you don't have to use this type of blocking board. You can use cardboard with the towel over it, or pieces of foam or sponge that you may have. It's just so that you can pin it in place and shape it. Now, blocking is a temporary fix. Once these dry, say I make a cotton towel and I block it and it's nice and crisp. Well, I use that towel, I throw it in the laundry, and when it comes out, it's not nice and crisp anymore. And that's one thing also to know about blocking. It is a temporary fix unless you stiffen it. But if you stiffen it up with some of the Elmer's glue or starch, once it goes through the laundry, it's also not going to be as crisp anymore. So keep that in mind. Now, as far as my opinion in blocking, I don't block everything. A lot of people will block absolutely everything, and I don't. I block smaller things like our Shamrocks and Four Leaf Clovers for a purpose, maybe ornaments, coasters, things like that. But I do know they're going to go through the wash, and keep that in mind. They're going to lose that shape, and you'll have to reblock it. I rarely ever block a blanket or a shawl or anything other than, say, I do block my doilies after they come out of the wash. I do block smaller coasters and things like that. But blocking is a temporary fix. All right, so let me see if I can answer some questions. What if I don't have a blocking board? We answered that. There are lots of other things that you can use. Do I have to block? No, you do not have to. For the granny squares, it just makes it easier. It just crisps things up and makes them look sharper. Okay, and remember, it is just a temporary fix. Can I wash it after they are blocked? You can. Remember, it's going to lose its shape. Okay, and then I have on there how to block. Basically, blocking is getting it wet and shaping it in the shape you want it and letting it dry. Sometimes if I'm blocking say a scarf because I want it to look really pretty, I won't pin it to the board. I'll lay it out on a big clean bath towel. I'll roll it up and set it on the dryer. Okay, now one thing to remember, that if you're blocking something that's made with wool and you swish it around in water, it's going to felt. So unless you want it to felt, don't swish it around in the soapy water or in anything else, because wool felts, which means it shrinks up. So keep that in mind as well. Now, I had a lot of questions about blocking, so I wanted to make our fun little applique shamrocks and four-leaf clovers, and answer some questions about blocking. So we can make some really simple four-leaf clovers and shamrocks and block them so they're nice and crisp for what we want to use them for. And again, like I said with the granny squares, I just block them to make it easier to put them together. And again, blocking is a temporary fix, and it makes it look nice and sharp and crisp for like a tablecloth or doily or things like that. So it does have a purpose, but you don't have to block everything. So I hope that answered your questions about blocking. The main thing to remember is it works great for crisping up your projects, but you don't have to block everything. And lastly, it is a temporary fix that if you wash it, you are going to have to reblock it, okay? So keep that in mind when you block in the first place. Alrighty, so thanks for being with me for Friday Fun Day today, and I'll see you next Friday for Friday Fun Day again. Bye-bye, everybody.